Hi, Rajkumar.
Good morning, Mahesh.
Morning. Good morning. Can people hear me? Let me just unmute people. So,
Yeah, Raj is there.
yeah.
Did you have your morning breakfast?
No, I just came back from my walk and I having my cup of tea. Hi, Varsha. Let me unmute. Yeah, I have to unmute people. 1 second. I'll be unmuting. So we'll just ask people to unmute before we start.
Good morning, Mahesh.
Morning. I'll do a quick round of introductions. Or what I'll do is, to save time, I'll send a note, with the profile of all the participants to everybody. So we are clear as to who's joining and who is. Kamlesh bhai, can you hear me? Good morning.
Good morning, Mahesh bhai. How are you?
God's grace, all well with you?
Yeah, everything good.
Okay. I miss you on my morning walks.
Yeah, I know. I do my walk here now
Okay, okay,
in the compound.
okay.
Yeah.
1 second. I think we'll start in a couple of minutes because we have a 40 minute time deadline. I have also set up another meeting which starts at 9 o'clock. So in case we want to continue, we'll probably we could extend this meeting if required. Hi Mahen, welcome. Rajesh, welcome. So how are things in Anil is from in Melbourne right now. So Anil, how is the COVID situation there?
Oh, there's no COVID here. I think Australia has been almost COVID-free for probably a month now, all over.
Okay, okay,
Victoria was the worst, but Victoria has been also COVID-free for almost 30 days. So no masks, little bit of sense in social distancing and masks in crowded places in Victoria.
okay,
But the rest of the country seems to be, life is back to normal, I think, pretty close to. Businesses are totally screwed up, but other than that, life is pretty much back to normal,
okay.
which is interesting.
But they have stopped flights, right? I presume all flights are stopped, is it? I mean, incoming and outgoing.
Well, flights are coming in, but they are bringing in only residents and citizens. So
Okay.
other than that, foreigners at the moment are not permitted into Australia.
Okay.
Quarantine is compulsory for everyone who comes in. I was in quarantine in Adelaide for 14 days.
Okay.
They had to test us twice, once on arrival and once prior leaving. So
Okay.
they're quite strict, but the damage has been done. Let's put it like that.
So if
Yeah.
I can ask, how do they ensure the quarantine? Is there, like in Korea, there is some tracking, or is it just on faith?
Okay, when we arrived in Adelaide, this is personally, we were hushed into a bus straight into a hotel in a very controlled manner. And even checking into the hotel, they were in groups of four rooms at a time,
Okay.
and we were locked up in the room for virtually 14 days. Everything was provided at just
Okay.
outside your door. You have to take it inside, even your food, the linen, so on and so forth. But we could not leave the room at all. In fact, we didn't have a key card to enter the room.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
It was,
this is at the cost of the state or the individual?
sorry, say that again.
The cost is borne by the state or the individual?
Individual. We pay for it.
Okay. Okay.
Initially, it was paid by the Australian government when they were encouraging people to return. But those who did not return during that stipulated period of time, everyone after that had to pay their own. And it's not cheap. It's about $4,000 for a couple for 14 days. But they ensure that safety is done.
Yeah. No, but it's, I mean, because Australia is such a large country, you know, it's remarkable that they are not finding, I mean, but just a quick follow-up question. Are they doing sufficient testing, Anil?
Well, I know in Victoria, they're testing about 15 to 20,000 tests per day.
Okay.
And I'm presuming likewise in every state, they would be doing a similar amount.
Okay.
So you're looking at about 100,000 tests per day for a population of 25, 26 million.
Okay. Okay.
And I think they've overall tested about 30 to 40% of the population so far.
Okay.
So quite significant. But because it is so sparsely populated, because the area is so big, 25 million in the kind of land that we have here makes it actually easier, because social distancing becomes almost automatic to a great extent.
Correct. Oh, good. Welcome, Sanjay. Sanjay is joining us from New York. Welcome, Mukul. Mukul is joining us from San Diego. Mahin is joining us from Ahmedabad. And Rajesh is joining us from Mumbai. So shall we start? We are about 10 people. Shall we start, Anil?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I'll just give a quick background. Anil and me have been schoolmates. I mean, we got in touch once again 5 years back through WhatsApp, and then we've been having very interesting discussions. Okay, Anil is essentially he was a shipping professional, and now he's into the oil business. Anil, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, and he's spoken on various forums, both in the shipping as well as the oil forums. And when we meet personally, I'll share with you all, because everybody over here is a close friend. I'll share with you some of the tales he's told me about his dealings with politicians in India in the oil era earlier. And he's, about 15 days back, we were having a discussion, and because see, the impression amongst most of us is that Trump has been a big failure in the US, but he had a very contrarian viewpoint. And he sent me 100-point fact, data from New York Times, which I went through, and I must admit that a lot of those things made sense. So I told him, why not, then have a discussion on this, because see, Trump is obviously very important for India also for various reasons. So that's how we got down to this, and that's how we are here today. I believe Anil has researched the US market, and I believe you're also starting a business in the US, Anil?
That's right.
Okay. So Anil, why don't you take it over, and then we have a 40-minute time limit because of Zoom, but I have another session which I have set up later. So in case we want to continue, we can continue. But we just thought we will, discuss this and then it open. And as like any other IT professional, I have set up a quick one slide, which if we get time, we'll discuss, because that is more on what I feel is the impact is what is going to happen on India, because a lot of interesting things are happening in India on the geostrategy front, from my understanding. So Anil, why don't we start?
Okay. What I'll do is let me make it clear. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican supporter. So that's very clear. I don't have too much of interest. I didn't have too much of interest in U.S. politics till Uncle Trump came online. He makes the whole thing very interesting, very different. It's not the mundane stuff. The other thing is I have no religious beliefs, whether Hindu, Muslim, Christian, whatever it may be. So whatever my views are purely my views and my opinions. And we'll make this whole thing a little interactive. So in case anybody wants to jump in or say something, please feel free. It's not like I'm going to just talk about it. I sit outside the US, so I see things from the outside. I'm sure the people who live in US may be having a different perspective, the whole thing. Each one is welcome to their views. So we'll start off with a couple of key things that I feel Trump did, which was quite different to the norm ever since politics in America became interesting. So one of the things that I noticed that since 1969, every president that came to rule, to take care of the US, somehow went into war in some part of the world or encouraged the war or started a war. Trump is probably one of those only few people or only person that I can think of who really didn't actively instigate a war or even continue a war as such. So he's a total businessman. He does not care. He's got his own flaws. He tweets like an idiot. I can afford to say that. I don't live in the US. He says things that are diplomatically incorrect. I think he's a poor diplomat in that sense. But from a business perspective and what he's done for the US, I think he's done remarkably well. Now, a lot of people think that besides not having gone into war, he concentrated totally on America and America alone in a great way. So he was looking at the interest of the people. But the way he approached it created a lot of enemies within the media. And media is a very strong part of dictating how the presidential rule goes in probably any country. Now, after this, if you notice that he concentrated on improving the exports of oil out of America. America is the highest consumer of crude oil in the world today, even though their population is not the largest, but they consume the highest amount of crude in the world. And they depended completely on imports from Middle East and Africa. He made reforms that all the oil reserves that US had that would encourage exploration through fracking, which is a new system. And today, America is not only the largest producer of crude oil, but is also the largest exporter of crude oil. So this surpasses Saudi, Russia, Venezuela, all these countries is number one in LNG and in oil. It has been a big revenue boost for America, which I don't know many people realize or not. Texas, Louisiana, California, these are big producers of crude oil and their refineries over there. So becoming a net importer to becoming a net exporter sometimes can take years and years and years. He implemented this very quickly. I think he came into power in 16, and by 17, US was started to export, and by 18 end, it was exporting close to 13 million barrels per day. Now, to put it in perspective, the world consumption is 100 million barrels per day. World consumption. And US was exporting 13 million barrels a day. That is a very large percentage, a very large percentage. So that when you do something like this, which is such an important commodity, all the other things starts within the country start falling in place, like employment. I've got a list of things over here, which they're all in those 123 points that is there on that New York Times. I just sort of listed some of them. Is the number of jobs went up, the poverty rate fell quite a lot. There was large amount of funding that he could give to the Black community, the Hispanic. Contrary to what people say, lot of people in the Hispanic and Black community did vote for Trump. Texas is a large community where you have the Hispanic people are there. He won the election in Texas and in Louisiana. So contrary to what all the media says, I think that Hispanics and the blacks did have a lot to contribute towards Trump's coming into power the first time also. He said a lot. If anybody wants to jump in, please feel free to jump in, and you can contradict me or discuss.
Anil, can
We can
you
have
kindly? I will share the article, New York Times article, to all the people who attended today. So in case they want to go through it, they can go through it. Yeah, continue.
Yeah. Okay. There was the other thing was the only country against whom he imposed any sanctions during his time was Venezuela, and that was his idea of, because Venezuela has the largest reserves in the world, more than Saudi. A lot of people don't know this, but Venezuela has more reserves, oil reserves, than Saudi Arabia or Russia has. By stopping their production or their exports, he enhanced his exports from that region. The crude oil that comes out from USA is probably the sweetest crude oil that almost any refinery in the world can process. So that was one thing he did against Venezuela. The other thing I noticed that what he did was in order to concentrate only on the Americans, he stopped a lot of funding to the international organizations like the WHO, they could be the World Health Organization. He's sort of limiting that because he found that they were not really adding value to the American economy. It was helping the world, but it was not helping the American economy as such directly. So if you notice, even this pandemic, he was not a big proponent of believing there is a pandemic. Now that's a different topic about the pandemic. We won't go into that. But Trump believes that there was no real pandemic. The definition of pandemic in his terms is the number of people who die when they're affected by an infection is what constitutes a pandemic or not. That was his view of it. So if you look at the number of people who actually died purely because of COVID, like I said, this is a different topic. We probably don't want to talk about it. But his views was that this was not really warranted to shut down the country. But since the states have their own power, each state had to do what the governor thought in that state to do, what was best for their state. So certain states shut down, certain states didn't shut down. Like Texas didn't shut down at all. Louisiana didn't shut down at all. So there was a lot of encouragement given to communities to continue with their business in the US, even during the pandemic time. If you notice, the stock market during his time has hit record highs. So that has been a big plus, even in the pandemic year. If you look at it, the blue chip companies did not suffer, even during this year of 2020. So obviously, the sentiments within the US, as long as he was in power, was always said to be positive. He reduced corporate tax. Yeah.
Anil, this is Mukul here. I have a question.
Sure.
How much of this that you just mentioned, the positive things, can you attribute directly to Trump?
Okay, good point. See, this is what everyone has in mind, is that a lot of things he carried forward during Obama's time into the Trump era. I agree with you. There were a lot of things that were initiated during the previous 8 years of Obama's reign that flowed into Trump's time. But in this way, you will never be able to ascertain what Trump did. Then we'll have to wait for the next 4 years to see what Trump's initiatives may have resulted helping the US economy. So yes, it is possible that a lot of initiatives may have been taken up prior to that, but it happened during the Trump era. And he supported that, otherwise he would have culled it. That's my view. And he's quite a take it or leave it kind of person. He will not flow along if he doesn't believe in it. There are a lot of projects that he has culled which he didn't believe in it. So that's my thinking.
I mean,
Thank you.
If I may interrupt, I mean,
yeah.
I used to be a Trump supporter at one time initially.
Mhm.
But my philosophy is, do you want a businessman to run your country?
Mhm.
There's something called diplomacy. In the world, America has lost its, we were called a superpower at one time. Today, nobody respects the country.
Yeah, we've lost our stature, right?
From this perspective, he's great, but I don't want a businessman running my country. I mean, the way he's, handled the pandemic. I mean, again, like you said, it's a different topic, has been a total disaster. Total disaster. I mean, look at the number of cases. You said he left Texas be open. Look at where Texas is today compared to where New York is. I mean, you got to take ownership. This guy, I mean, even running a business, you take ownership. This guy doesn't take ownership for anything unless it's a successful venture. I mean, in the last 1 year, I've become, I didn't vote for Trump. Initially, the first go around I did. And from a business perspective, he's done great, absolutely. But I don't want a businessman running my country.
Okay,
Again,
that's a fair point. No, fair point. Fair point. Now, if you think about it, all right, what's wrong with Texas right now? If you think about it right now, what is wrong with Texas? Okay, the number of cases are high. So what? Number of cases are high in India also. So what?
The death rates are high. The cases are high. So, I mean,
we won't go into that because that's, like I said, a different discussion. So we leave it for some other time.
Right.
Because we have got all our views about it and we can discuss it. But you're right. His diplomatic skills are absolutely zero, no doubt. Okay, talking about what you and Mukul said about the reputation of America outside is gone to the dumps. You can't have wine when you're talking. You bloody make it tempting.
9:30 at night, my friend.
Okay, it's not true, Sanjay. The impression of America is not in the dumps. It's not in the dumps, all right? Let the media say what they have to say. People outside still today look up to America. Look up to America, and that has not changed.
Well, I
what
hope
has changed is his diplomatic skills are absolutely shit. But now then, if you tell me, yes, you're right, you don't want a businessman running a country. True, right? But if that businessman brings jobs to the country, improves the economy of the country, brings up the minimum rate of individuals, reduces corporate tax from 35% to 21%. Singapore has a corporate tax of 17%. And if US has a corporate tax of 21%, do you know how many international companies will want to go and work there?
Agreed, but where will all the money come from?
Different story. Different story.
No point. The money's got to come from somewhere.
Fair enough.
So, with the kind of like the social securities, the health benefits that we have in this country, we need to have a certain amount of taxation. I mean, today, India has a lesser rate of taxation than we do, but India doesn't give you social security. India doesn't give you health benefits. So, for all the, I mean, we are living here. I mean, I've been here for close to 20 years. We are used to certain infrastructure. We are used to certain benefits. So that money's got to come from somewhere.
In my opinion, if you're having corporate tax and personal tax as the way to run your country, it's a very primitive way of living. I mean, even India is changing in that matter. Taxes are coming down, but hopefully they're trying to create a system whereby the people in India are going to benefit in different ways. Businesses in some way or the other. Now, if you think about his war with China, all right, nobody, I mean, I'm sorry if there's ladies over there, nobody had the guts to take on China.
Totally on board with that. Totally on board.
Okay. China is doing what the Roman Empire did, what the British Empire did, but this is in an economic state.
Right.
They're virtually taking over the world.
Absolutely.
Trump has said, back off. We have got enough reserves. We have got enough oil. We've got enough minerals. Why aren't we doing it ourselves? Basically, China had made America a dumping ground. Whatever you produce, I'll give it to you cheaper. So you've got no choice. That's how businesses die locally. Australia is totally finished because of that.
The war everywhere.
Yeah. So he did the right thing by taking on China and saying, back off. You're not going to dump anything and anything into my country. If you want to give me quality stuff, try and compete with us also. We have, the mines got shut down. Margaret Thatcher did the same thing in UK. All right. What she did was she closed all the coal mines. What happens? UK becomes an importing nation suddenly when you have reserves sitting there just because your cost of production is high. So somewhere you have to draw the line to tell a country that you can't do this to my people. You can't kill an industry and walk away. Today, Australia has no car manufacturing company. Why? Because all the stuff is coming from Thailand, from China, from Korea. Finished. Industry is over. So he had the guts to take on China and telling him, we need to trade fair. You need to trade fairly. So it takes a lot of guts to do that for an economic
I'll be
superpower.
honest, Anil, because I mean, I'm talking about my industry. He imposed tariffs. If you're importing from China, you pay 15% extra duty. Guess what the Chinese did? They subsidized by 15%. So I
what
mean,
happens is America gains.
Sorry?
America gains 15%.
Yeah, but
effectively, whoever pays for it.
But see, what happens is, Anil, the thing is, he's saying made in America. Unfortunately, we don't have that infrastructure today for manufacturing. And plus, even if we did, the damn people have become so lazy that they don't want to work in factories. I mean, I experienced that myself. I don't get workers. They don't want to work. They want to sit at Walmart in air conditioning, be, checkout people or service people, but they don't want to put in a time in manufacturing because they're lazy.
Almost every
It'll take
Western
time.
world,
I listen. The overall perspective is great, but it's for the next 50 years, it's going to be tough.
any Western country over a period of time becomes lazy because they get used to all the comforts.
Absolutely.
Right? That's why people have immigration policies to bring in people from less developed countries so that they can cater for the workforce.
Right.
50 years later, people like yourself who came 20 years later today are not doing what you were doing 20 years ago. So that's how the immigration policy is catered for, to cater to all these things. But if you're, and he made a mistake. Now, what is wrong in saying that I will not allow illegal immigrants to come in? I see nothing wrong in that. What is wrong? Why would you want an illegal immigrant in any country?
You don't.
So nothing wrong. The problem was he used Mexicans and he used those terms. That was incorrect. But if he stuck to, if you look, forget the words he said, but you look the context of what he's saying, I don't see anything wrong with that.
And Anil, this is Mahesh here. Hi, how are you?
Good. Yourself?
Yeah, good. Just listening in. And, Trump is who he is. He's obviously not as sophisticated as he should have been. But he's been the only non-politician president our country ever had. And Sanjay, I was listening into you, and yeah, I support Trump, and I supported him before. I wish he just never went on Twitter, because that's been his downfall. His policies, and even with his illegal immigrants talking about immigration, it has a lot to do with, like currently right now with the census coming up in the US. And this will basically be going to Supreme Court because they want to, obviously the Democrats would want to include illegal immigrants as part of the census, and the conservatives don't want to, because that affects the way you can demographically shift the states into allowing Congress or senators from that particular state. And it becomes very complicated with that once you start using illegal immigrants and recognize them as part of the census. So that's a problem. Illegal immigrants also drain into all the benefits, health insurance that Sanjay was talking about. I'm a physician and I see that a lot. I mean, a lot of illegal immigrants do get insurance, and legal immigrants like Sanjay and Mukul and I somehow cover for their insurance and all the benefits that they get. So there is a big divide with that. I mean, of course, I do see patients who don't have insurance. I will see immigrants, legal, illegal, it doesn't matter to me in my profession. But the bottom line is someone is paying for that. And, I mean, that's what's going to happen starting 2021, higher taxes, and we'll all be paying for those higher taxes. So, and Trump, I know, cut down corporate taxes, personal taxes, which goes a long way, encourages industry. He obviously fought China and no one else did. The big thing now is with Iran, with the assassination.
Yesterday.
Whoever is involved, most likely Israel. And as Biden is very strongly wanting to go into the Iran nuclear deal again. So that's going to complicate things. And I'll let Anil comment on that, because I think that's going to be another angle that's going to change things here geopolitically for the world.
Yeah, look, it will. I've not gone into the details of what happened overnight. It's a little bit unclear as to who may have instigated all this, who has done it, and what will be the repercussions. Iran is always going to be a threat in the Middle East, and the Western world, I think, is always going to oppose them. There are certain, I don't know, I'm a big proponent of, but again, that can be a different discussion, is that whenever a leader of a country defies the American rule or their norms, there is some form of a way of getting rid of the head of the state. It's happened in the past. It happened with Saddam Hussein. It happened with Gaddafi. It happened with a few others. Fidel Castro was about to be gone during his time. So it's always going to be a basket case as far as Iran is concerned. I don't know how it's going to impact Iran if they start producing the oil and exporting the oil without the sanctions. It's going to affect America big time, because now there is no turning back about the oil. All the oil majors have invested so much of money into the exploration in the US with this fracking, that if you now tell them, no, stop producing and start producing, it doesn't happen like this. And with renewable energies coming in, with so much of reserves sitting there, it could be a wasted resource if renewable energies come around in a big way. So that's my opinion on things. There's a couple of other points which I had written down. Again, I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but in the fact check, it came out as correct, is that the poverty rate today is probably the lowest in the last 20 years. So it's down to about 11% for any country in the Western world. If you have those kind of poverty rates, it's quite remarkable. And Mahesh, Mahesh Bhaya, one of the things you had mentioned was that he's the only non-politician who's come to power as president. But there have been few, because I think Americans like to vote for someone who is little different. Reagan was one of them. He was an actor, so he came. And then you had governors in different states who have been bodybuilders and film stars who have run where Mukul is from. Yeah, Mukul? Schwarzenegger?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there have been a few instances like that. And
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah. So the most important thing for a country, I think, besides the knowledge of diplomacy, is to be a good orator. And unfortunately, that's where Mr. Trump fell apart. Whether it is his way of talking or his tweeting or his putting up his posts, that's where he fell short. Obama, on the other hand, had a very sophisticated way of dealing with diplomacy, but he was not a mover and shaker. He followed the norms. What was, again, I'm a man of controversy, is this society that dictates terms to the world. He followed the norms. He didn't defy anything other than the ordinary.
He was a professor, not an executor.
Yeah.
Anil,
So,
Anil, I have a question going ahead. Is that going ahead now, okay, Trump did put into perspective and put into action various amount of things. But now going ahead with Biden, what do you see is the relationship between India and America going to be in the future?
My opinion is that India is going to be an emerging power. There's no doubt about it. With see, the only thing India lacked was a steady leadership and a non-corrupt government. The moment the world feels that that has come about, there will be companies just flowing into India to do business. You've got a mix of hardworking people and intelligent people, and you've
But
got
as of today,
population.
But has that perception changed, Amit? Excuse me, Prasanth. Anil, has that perception changed about India? That it is a place to reckon with vis-a-vis ease of doing business, corruption, effectiveness, etc., right? I mean, the brains are there. There's no doubt about it, right? But there was a time when people wanted to go to China because even though there was corruption in China, there was still ways that they could get things executed again, as opposed to India.
Correct. See, I'll give you a small example here. I think companies are still moving to India for a lot of things. One of my neighbors, he is the global head R&D of Philips, okay, which has completely moved from Hamburg and Amsterdam, from Scandinavia into Pune now. There were 40,000 square feet, 500 people R&D center here, okay. Philips Global. So this has just happened about a year back, and it's expanding very fast. So I was talking to him yesterday, and he said that you won't believe the amount of companies that want to move to India simply because of the knowledge, the tech, and the people, and the diversity that we actually give in terms of research and development is amazing. So maybe not service related people, but there will be people from the IT industry really flowing in. Healthcare is moving into AI. Mahesh, I'm sure we'll be able to talk about that. And healthcare is badly needed to be monitored and continuously, supported by the supported for the patients, etc. Real time. So I think that's a huge industry, and people are just flowing into India in terms of healthcare. Mahesh?
See, my opinion, Mukul, to answer your question, I think the perception has still not been cemented. I think there is still a lot of skepticism about India. All right. This is again my view. And when I talk to the industry, there is still a fair bit of red tape. I mean, it's reduced a lot from what it was. But there is still some red tape. Look, I was in a conference about 8 years ago in Fujairah, which is in UAE. And one of the topics given to me was, why isn't India the leading power in as far as bunkering goes? Now, bunkering, I don't know whether you understand, is where you supply oil to the ships. Yeah, so you have Fujairah and you have Singapore. So Colombo used to be a little bit of a bunkering place, but India having such a large coastline and a lot of ships are moving from Middle East to the Far East, they go around the Indian coast. So why isn't India a big power as far as bunkering goes? And the simple answer to that was, there is so much of bureaucracy and so much of bullshit, so much of taxes that makes it totally non-competitive. And I got flack for it because the heads of BP and IOCL were sitting in the audience, and I was ripped apart after that nicely. But coming back to, I think there is still a lot of skepticism about India. They still feel there is some amount of red tape. Now, for example, I was reading somewhere, to set up a company in India can take you about a month. Whereas in China, you could do the same thing in probably 10 to 15 days. It's as simple as that. Now, this is the first stage, then you have so many things about opening accounts and so on and so forth. Now, when you look at MNCs, for them, they don't want to waste time over setting up a company. That's a doer and a given. I wouldn't want to come and sit in India signing documents just to set up a company. So there is still that doubt. I think one more term of Modi, if he does it well, the way he did the first one, I know there are a lot of things that he may have done which could have been done better or different. I won't get into that. If he does the same reign and he starts getting majority, people have confidence in stability. And that's when things will start shifting,
Yeah. So one thing, if I may, this is information from people who have been working directly with the Modi team. My sister's husband's very good friend works with the Modi team on many international and internal topics. And the one thing that I've been told repeatedly is that this man is a workaholic. He's absolutely non-corrupt. and he's a taskmaster for himself as well as others, right?
So what
So
about
that's-
his right-hand man, Amit Shah? See,
I-
one person doesn't make the country, unfortunately.
yeah.
But it's a good start. You know, you need the head to be stable and clean and a driver.
Yeah, but
He is.
if the kingmaker is not a driver, what can the king do? That's the reality I've been seeing. Yeah, you know. And
but is Amit Shah still alive? Is Amit Shah still alive? He's disappeared for months.
Well, there's a reason behind that.
He's very much alive, Prasann. He's just fighting the Hyderabad municipal elections. Yeah. And see, one good thing about the BJP, I mean, irrespective of the other things, is even a small Zilla Parishad election, they put in all their resources. They just fight like there is no other thing. Anyway, so we continue. I just, we don't have a time limit, so we can continue. And I just wanted to react to 3-4 points which were made earlier. Unless somebody else has any questions, then I can point.
No, we were talking about Biden's thing towards India.
Yeah,
my perspective, traditionally, Democrats have not been pro-India, but today, US need India to offset China.
Absolutely. Actually, I have a small.
Oh, without doubt.
Going to be any change in towards India as far as the US is concerned?
Yeah, actually, I have a small slide, which I have made. So if
please go ahead.
I will quickly go through it and then we can discuss it, because that probably covers the points which concerns which were there. Before that, I just wanted to react to 3-4 points which were discussed. One was on the pandemic. I was talking to my son. My younger son is in New York. He is in the same area. He's an infectious diseases specialist, and he was saying there was apparently a motorcycle convention which happened last week in the US, where more than 1 lakh people attended. So he says a lot of cases are going to come from there, plus also from the Trump meetings which were held.
Yeah.
Plus he's saying again next week, because of Thanksgiving, everybody in the US has been traveling. So that is one point. The other one on the stock market, I was shocked to find out the number of dollars which have been printed this year itself is almost 25% of the total dollars which existed as on 1st January 2020. Just printed. I mean, thankfully, because America doesn't have to answer its dollars, doesn't have to back its dollars with gold. The third point, as regards the perception of US declining, it's a common concern which everybody, every US person you speak to says. Actually, my answer is no, because smart people know that the institutions in the US are much stronger than the president himself. And the last point about the I think there was a point made on the insurance. Sorry, I missed that point. So just quickly, let me just set up. I'll just share my screen, and I just promise you it will be a quick. Just 1 second. Huh? Can you guys see my screen?
No,
not yet.
No.
Oh, 1 second.
you guys should read. We'll come to that later.
Yeah. Continue. I'll.
There's a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I don't know whether you read this book.
No.
It's written by John Perkins. He's an American. He was a CIA person. He's now on the hit list, and he's trying to escape because he has exposed a lot of things that the CIA did during his time. He's probably in his 70s, maybe now 60s, 70s. But when he was young, if you can get the book, it may be banned in the US, but I think on Amazon outside the US, you may be able to get it. It's called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Okay.
It's very, very, very interesting as to how America became a superpower and how they converted US dollars to be the currency where all trade flows through. It's very, very interesting.
Tiger, can you put the name on the chat?
Yeah. I'll share the name.
Lovely.
Confessions of an American Hitman, right? I'll share the name.
Economic
Confessions.
Yeah.
Of Economic Hitman.
By John Perkins.
John Perkins. Okay.
PER.
Fine. So essentially, just wanted to, I was reading that the American incoming Secretary of State, who is Anthony Blinken, who's been appointed by Biden. He is responsible for all the congratulatory calls which are coming into the US to Joe Biden. And very interestingly, after he spoke to their allies, I believe Japan and Europe on the same day, he spoke to India, Israel, and he has put China on hold. So this news was current as of 3 days back. So Xi Jinping apparently has not been able to get an appointment to speak with Joe Biden. So this is just one point. So I just thought it was a very interesting fact which was there. So the whole question really is, the first doubt I have in my mind is, will actually Trump leave the White House on Jan 20th? Okay, that is still a big question mark. See, I attend a weekly meeting which is in which a lot of top US computer scientists and this is their biggest concern, that and I'll try and tie down to what we discussed earlier about the assassination of the Iranian nuclear scientist, which I just mentioned as a point. There was a meeting between the Israeli PM and the Mossad chief with MBS. MBS is Saudi prince. And the Mossad chief is very close to Pompeo. Pompeo is the current US Secretary of State. Okay. And which resulted in this. So my reading as a layperson is that the US deep state coordinated this to make things very difficult for Joe Biden, because the incoming NSA, which is Jake Sullivan, was the chief Iran deal negotiator in the Obama administration. So some people are saying that there is going to be a scorched earth policy by Trump, by which he will create as much of a mess as possible before Joe Biden takes over. And still Trump has almost 47 or 48% of the votes. Plus, I believe he still controls the Senate. If somebody else can correct me, I would appreciate that. So things make things so difficult. If you guys remember, before 2014, 3 to 4 years before Modi came in, they had literally made the UPA, incapable of governing, every legislation which was good. You call it Manrega, or you call it the GST bill. They didn't allow all those good decisions which finally Modi passed, to be implemented. So politically, I doubt whether, I see things becoming more difficult in terms of domestic politics. For me, the more interesting part is what India has been making very, very strong moves in Pakistan, Nepal, and the neighborhood. All of you know that, currently Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif has apparently been the belief is that he was met by one of the Ajit Doval's persons in a suit in London. And this happened about a month back, and he's the guy who's now, being propped up by India to make things difficult for Imran Khan and the army. Nepal, again, I believe the relationships are coming up. There was a problem earlier. Nepal, a lot of Nepalese leaders, wanted to tie up with China, which I believe is changing. Because if you see Nepal and if you see Tibet, geographically they are the same. Tomorrow China can take over Nepal and claim it to be their own state. And in the neighborhood, again, if you see Southeast Asia last 8-10 days, a lot of very interesting things have been happening from India. Pakistan is being currently pressurized by UAE and Saudi Arabia to recognize Israel. Okay, now Israel and India are the two threats which every Pakistani is told right from birth that, these are the two enemies that you need to hate. And very interestingly, last 7 days, Modi has issued 2 threats to Pakistan. He has done it twice. And he's not doing it because of the Hyderabad election. So I wonder whether something is happening over there, China, Anil mentioned it. China has issued a 14-point charge sheet to Australia. The first time in the world where a country is literally telling some other country, look, you are doing this wrong. The incoming US Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, is making the right noises about India. People who may not be aware, he is a very, very strong China-Pakistan opponent. So people over here are feeling that possibly, he and see, the way I look at it, there is a India-China currently face-off happening. There are 50,000 troops which are there on the borders. with China, you cannot negotiate with them unless they are given a face saver. Some face saver would have to be given to them. And the entire world's eyes are literally on that, because let's understand, China and India have a 3,500 kilometer border. Okay, US doesn't have it. So US Pompey can sit over there and pass whatever comments they want on China, but China really doesn't impact them the way it impacts India. So I call it. I have coined a word called chipak. Chipak is China, CHI and PAK, Pakistan. We really have a chipak problem. It's not a Pakistan problem, it's a chipak problem. So I feel something is happening in terms of giving a face saver to China. And maybe, the person who will have to compromise over there is Pakistan. Because if you see Pakistan, they have recently, recognized, or they've made moves to recognize Gilgit-Baltistan, through which the Chinese CPEC highway goes through. And the minute they do that, there was a Secret Service note sent by the Pakistani Secret Service to Imran Khan, saying that if we do this, it will basically endorse India's position on 370 in Kashmir. So completely Yeah, sorry.
Can you repeat that, Mahesh? The last part, I missed that.
See, Gilgit-Baltistan is a province which in our Indian maps shows as POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. Okay. The Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, which is
CPEC.
That CPEC highway runs through Gilgit-Baltistan. Okay. There are Chinese military presence in Gilgit-Baltistan since the last 2 to 3 years. India knows it. Everybody knows it. So what China has done is they have pressurized Pakistan to recognize this as a province, which actually, if you go by the UN, Pakistan keeps talking of 1948 UN resolutions. If you go by that, this basically means that implicitly Pakistan has recognized India's 370 move. And maybe my reading is that, India could negotiate with Chipak, which means negotiate with China for a face saver, and maybe the boundaries could be redrawn exactly as they reflect on reality. Maybe, I don't know, because it's a political hot potato for both countries. So on the other point which was mentioned on the incoming US administration, I'm sure people over here were concerned that the Democrats traditionally have been favoring all the liberals, so Kashmir could be on the agenda. I believe even Pakistan is probably spending millions of dollars in time, in trying to get hold of the Democratic team and lobbying and all. But the way I look at it, we have today, just as how Pakistan was a frontline state for the US in Afghanistan, India is today becoming the frontline continent or country against China in the entire Indo-Pacific Ocean. Why is Indian Ocean so important? See, let's understand, till the oil, even today, China, like India, imports a lot of crude oil. All their crude oil currently, Anil, you could correct me, most of their crude oil currently passes from the Suez Canal, it comes into the Arabian Sea, it goes into the Indian Ocean, and then it goes all the way up back. So China is concerned that America and Indian navies will essentially blockade that. So that is why the CPEC was, developed as an alternative route, which would, let China and India, China reduce its dependence on the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea. So this is what I feel, that today America really doesn't have a choice but to depend on India, and for that they may only, the good point I see in this is that, this entire CAA business, Citizen Amendment Act, which actually has split the country. If you see the riots which were happening when Trump was here in February 2020 in Delhi, this entire movement hopefully could get delayed, which will be actually good for the country from an economic point of view, because at the end of the day, it is economy. Last 3 points are on the economy, so I'll just quickly wrap it up. November 2020, India got 50,000 crores. I think the exact figure is 58,000 crores in FII investment, foreign investment which has come in. Obviously, it has come into the stock market. Ruchi Sharma, who is a very respected analyst, says that the money will first come into equities, commodities, and then it will also go into real estate. Because if it comes into real estate in India, it will see real estate is a very big employment multiplier. If I spend 1 lakh on a real estate project, I buy cement, I buy bricks, I hire a laborer. So it gives maximum. It has got maximum employment generation. So Ruchi Sharma believes that a lot of money will come into real estate in India after equities and commodities. Bitcoin, those of you who follow cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin has moved very, very rapidly. And Facebook has a cryptocurrency called as Libra, which people say will be positioned by the US against China. I call China as cheek, because in defense circles, China is referred to as cheek, because they keep creating pain for everybody, and cheek means scream. So Facebook has just yesterday announced that in January 2021 they want to promote Libra, which is their cryptocurrency. Only difference is, earlier they were saying it is going to be against all currencies, but now they are only talking about the US dollar. So there has been news that this will be used against China, because the minute China comes out with their own cryptocurrency, Facebook could be the position against that. Last point is, Joe Biden has come out of this with very, very interesting. I think there is a conference of democratic countries which is happening in the US this year. His point is that 75% of the world's GDP can fight China. So India, US, and Japan and Australia, and the other democratic countries can actually fight China together. So my last point is A plus B greater than C. America plus Bharat. When I say Bharat, I really mean the rural, the large $1 billion market which really attracts everybody. A plus B can probably be greater than C. So let's see. These are my points. I just wanted to quickly thanks for your time.
Just one more thing.
Yes.
Just one more thing is, and this China will never agree to, will not openly concede. The issue is that China has invested so much within their own country to cater to supplying to the whole world whatever they are producing, whether it be petroleum products or other products. And now with this revolution coming against China, they are now stuck with this whole infrastructure. Now, if they cannot use it, that's going to hit their GDP in a big way.
Okay.
And that could be their downfall. The other thing is, the oil that China is presently using largely comes from Russia through a pipeline.
Yes.
Yeah. So a large chunk of their oil comes through a pipeline, and nobody knows, or it's not openly declared as to what quantities are coming through.
Okay.
And the other set of oil comes from Africa.
Okay.
So which is West Africa, which is Nigeria. So Venezuela and Nigeria used to supply, now that Venezuela is shut. So the bulk of the oil comes from these two regions. But the amount of imports have reduced quite dramatically in China, purely because they don't know where to use the products that are being produced.
Yeah.
Anil, I have a question that going ahead, do you think that if there is a standoff among, political standoff or whatever, would Russia support India or would Russia support China?
I think there would be some allegiance to China, because there is a lot of dependence between those two countries, which will not be spoken about. Out in the open, they may say something different, but behind the scenes, I think they'll have a lot of allegiance to China.
See, that's
personally, I think.
That's what I was just going to say. The wild card here is Mr. Putin. He's not
exactly
and yet. And God knows what he's got up his sleeve. I mean, he's having problems internally. We all know that. But, who knows?
He's a powerful man. He's a very powerful man.
Yeah. So he's a wild card here, I think.
Israel will play a big part in the Middle East.
Because in the context of also USA and India and what it means, either Trump or Biden, I think, like he rightly said, Sanjay said, is there is a joker in the pack, and which can swing the entire mood either this way or that way,
It's true.
fighting on multiple. See, don't forget that India, with its multiple borders, is trying to fight a war, or wars across multiple, lines of action. So not only do we have Pakistan, but China and Burma and various other insurgencies happening everywhere else. So at the end of it, if we are internally caught up with so much of these things, how quick will we be able to react to any global aggression? Is my point of view, because at the end of it, we really do have very less soldiers. Our tank divisions have come down drastically because we don't have the newer tanks in that much capacity. Our aircrafts are now being boosted by the Rafale, but otherwise we have got very old aircrafts. Though Russia, of course, supports us in terms of the air warfare. And probably Australia will come to our help, because now there's a new relationship between Australia and India, which has gone a big way in terms of missiles and all, which they are buying from us. So the whole world power situation is to me is a very dynamic situation, and I think the next 6 months or 1 year will really define the pulse of power in the global stage. This is my view, at least.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Any
have
other
another.
points? Yeah, Mukul. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had one more question, right? I mean, one of the things that concerned me is positioning of Biden and Kamala Harris compared to Trump, the relationship between Trump and Modi versus Biden, Harris, and Modi, right? I have some skepticism about that, just because there has been some noise about the 370 and the CAA and stuff like this, right? In terms of whether the support will continue from US, because that needs US support to keep it alive, right?
So you're asking, sorry, yeah.
To keep whom alive, Mukul?
No, that the thing is not getting reversed, so to speak, right?
See,
there was talk about this Kamala Harris saying that, oh, this is human rights and it's not the right thing to do, removal of 370 at some place.
Okay. See, I personally feel today China is such a big threat to the US. So I think that issue will be discussed privately. And just let's not forget one more thing: Supreme Court in India has not yet decided on this matter. Okay, so the matter is still pending before the Supreme Court. So I have a feeling that the way the courts will pass a decision, it will favor the government, and the issue will get closed. Because see, once you are in power, once she sits in the White House or Biden sits in the White House, and they realize that, I mean, Prasanth spoke of AI. I could have a separate session on how China, the kind of things that they are doing in AI. I mean, you cannot even imagine. See, US is still leading the world in basic AI research, but when it comes to implementation, when it comes to actually having projects which are running on AI, China is way ahead. That's why I feel when I say A plus B today, India. I have got 3 boys in my house. All of them have smartphones which are much more powerful than my phone. Today, with India's 1 billion mobile population, with AI, and AI basically needs a lot of data to work with. So a US technology plus Indian data can be a counterfoil to China. Just see what has happened in last 45 days. Just one company, Reliance Jio, has gotten equity and money from Facebook. It has gotten equity and money from Google. It has gotten equity and money from Silver Lake Partners. Why? Because of Jio's mobile platform. So to answer your question, I think once they come to office, they might raise some polite noises privately, but I don't think it will be a big issue.
Okay, that's good to know.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Isn't the Electoral Commission going to make an announcement by the early part of December about the election part of it, so that this matter can be put to bed?
You're asking me?
Yeah, in the US, about the election. I think the Electoral Commission is going to pass a ruling.
Electoral
Yeah.
College has to certify. Yeah. Somebody in the US.
Okay. Isn't that going to be settled by early December?
I think.
Yeah, they will be certifying in December. I think it's December 15th or 20th.
Okay.
And that hopefully will put the matter to rest. Although Trump has said that he will keep fighting till the end, and he always comes up with different language. But it's going to come to an end soon, before the new year.
Chalo, good. That's good. Okay. Any other questions? Kamlesh bhai, you have any questions? Any points? Any thoughts? Oh, I think he didn't hear me. Okay. Okay. Any other point? Any other? Rajesh, Mahend, Dr. Anjali, Jibu. Okay. Shall we wrap up?
Yes.
Right,
Thank you,
guys.
Mahesh and Anil,
Okay.
everybody.
Chalo,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Oi, Raja.